Do I qualify for the CDC Eviction Moratorium? A video from Idaho Legal Aid Services. This video is intended for your education and information and should not be a substitute for legal advice. If you need legal advice, please contact an attorney. On September 1st, 2020, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, otherwise known as the CDC, issued an order entitled Temporary Halt in Residential Evictions to Prevent the Further Spread of COVID-19. The order is in effect between September 4th, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. The order applies to certain residential evictions for non-payment of rent, and we'll talk more about what that means. Tenants, in order to be protected under the order, must meet 5 essential criteria. And in order to meet those criteria, tenants have to provide a written declaration. In this video, we're going to go through what that declaration needs to include, what that criteria means, and how tenants can use that protection in Idaho to prevent being evicted. For criteria 1, the tenant needs to have an expected income less than $99,000 in 2020, or have received a stimulus check, or not have been required to report income to the IRS in 2019. The stimulus check is probably the easiest indicator about whether you meet criteria 1, though I do know some people have yet to receive their stimulus check. So if you're in that situation, it might be good to follow up with the IRS. For criteria 2, the tenant must be unable to pay the full rent amount due to an income loss or extraordinary medical bills. Regarding the income loss, that could mean a loss of hours, layoff, reduction in self-employment, loss of tips, really anything that amounts to an income loss that would prevent you from paying your full rent. I note that there is nothing in the order that requires a tenant to provide proof of lost income to a landlord. Showing something like that, such as a pay stub with reduced hours, that would be your choice. The order defines extraordinary medical expenses as unreimbursed medical expense likely to exceed 7.5% of one's adjusted gross income for the year. So you'll need to crunch some numbers on that one. For criteria 3, the tenant needs to have used his or her own best efforts to obtain governmental rent assistance. In Idaho, this means at a minimum contacting navigation through health and welfare by calling 211 on your phone or accessing their website. You should also be contacting Idaho Housing and Finance to see if they have any COVID-19 relief funds. There may be other local resources in your area. For criteria 4, the tenant needs to be likely to become homeless or forced to live in close quarters in another residence if evicted. What this means is if you are unable to pay your rent because of that loss of income and you were evicted, either you would wind up in a shelter or doubling up with family and friends. Both of these situations could lead to the spread of COVID-19, and this is what the CDC wants to avoid. Finally, for criteria 5, the tenant needs to promise to make timely partial payments that are as close to the full payment as the individual's circumstance may permit. This means that a tenant is going to pay what they can throughout this process towards the rent. Not making reasonable partial payments based on your situation could be a reason for your landlord to challenge your protections under this eviction moratorium. So this is an important one, and documenting it the best you can will keep you safer. All of the previous criteria need to be attested to in a written declaration. What that means is the tenant must provide the landlord a written statement under the penalty of perjury that they qualify for those 5 essential criteria we just talked about. The written declaration makes you a covered person, meaning that if your landlord tries to evict you for non-payment of rent or for not paying additional fees or costs from the tenancy, that you can be protected under this moratorium. You have to be a covered person to be protected. And so you must do the declaration to be able to have those protections. Now make sure that you keep a copy of the declaration for your own records and deliver the declaration in a safe and verifiable way to your landlord. This could mean sending it certified mail or delivering a copy in person with a witness. As opposed to trying to write your own declaration, I suggest that you use a form declaration. There are several available at idaholegalaid.org. There's also one available through the National Housing Law Project. If you just Google them, it's on their website. The declaration must be under the penalty of perjury, and that's important to note because there's some language in the order that talks about how if someone lies on this declaration, that could open them up for criminal charges, potentially going to jail or paying a fine. And so telling the truth on this is going to be important. Also, each adult listed on the lease should complete a declaration or at least sign onto a joint declaration. Regarding how this applies in Idaho, Idaho Code Section 6-303 Part 2 is where landlords can try to evict tenants for falling behind on their rent payments. So the eviction moratorium would expressly apply in those types of cases. Likewise, if a landlord is trying to evict someone for not paying late fees or other charges under the tenancy, Idaho Code 6-303 Part 3 could apply in that the landlord may be claiming it is a breach of the lease for not paying those fees and charges. It's unclear exactly how the courts are going to handle this CDC order, so there are a few things to be aware of. First off, nothing in this will stop your rent from being owed. Providing a written declaration to your landlord will not stop you from owing your landlord rent. And all back rent will be due come January 1st, 2021. So it's going to be important to make those payments as you can. Try and make a plan to address that issue when that time comes around. It's also important to note that there may also be other protections and defenses in your situation. So contacting an attorney to talk about your specific facts will be beneficial. If you have a current eviction pending, the CDC order seems to apply to all phases of the eviction process. And on Idaho Legal Aid's website, there is a declaration that is in the form of something you would file with the court. And so it would be beneficial to fill out a declaration if you apply, and you can answer truthfully to all those questions, regardless of whether or not there is an eviction hearing, regardless of where you are in the process. If you need more information, resources, or a copy of that sample declaration that we talked about, feel free to visit our website at idaholegalaid.org. You can also do an intake to speak with an attorney on our website or by calling the number listed on your screen. Thank you.